Good evening to all our listeners. Welcome to the Be Reach program. I am Ananya. I am a fourth year EXTC student. So today's speaker that we have on board is Dr. Hemang Shah. I would like to now call upon Nagananda sir, Training and Placement Officer at PESIT, to please introduce our speaker for the day.
Welcome to the Visit Reach program. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Hemang Shah. He completed his engineering in Visit in 2002 from telecommunication batch, and he went on to do his MS in telecommunication engineering from Drexel University, and later on completed his PhD too in the same university. And he has got the certifications of ISO 9001 2008 and the innovations of product and services from MIT. With respect to his experiences, he's been in Qualcomm for around more than 12 years now, and presently he is the India engineering lead for Qualcomm Innovative Lab, which is a state-of-the-art lab to perform end-to-end system level innovation. And he was earlier a strategist for multimedia and sensor technologies, and responsible for innovation strategy. And earlier he was a system engineering lead for multimedia and MEMS display. He is very passionate about technology, intellectual property strategy, patents, design thinking, and he has around 10 publications in his name, has 2 US patents, and more than 10 patents are pending with the US and other international patent office. And he is also the co-chairman of the National IPR Council, Associated Chambers of Commerce and Industry of India. He is the executive board member for the Licensing Executive Society International, and he is also on the board of advisory for schools to design science and engineering subjects for the students. Okay, so it's a great pleasure to have Hemang with us here, and words cannot express the amount of joy and happiness and pride I get to introduce Hemang Shah as Dr. Hemang Shah. I'm so happy that we are connected, and we hope this legacy continues. And welcome, Dr. Hemang.
Thank you so much, Nagnan sir. It's really a very good privilege.
Yeah.
Feels amazing, to hear from Vezit after all these years. Uh, Whatever I am did start at Vezit. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Nagananda sir, and welcome on board, Dr. Hemang Shah. So about this program, We Reach, this interview is a part of a series of interviews that we are going to do with the esteemed alumnus, where they share their experiences and their knowledge with the students at their alma mater, that is VESIT. So Hemang sir, once again, really, really happy to have you on board today. And how are you doing? How are you dealing with the lockdown and the corona and everything?
Ananya, thanks so much for hosting me. Uh, it's been interesting, to be go through such a lockdown, a period as such. It's been what I think more than 3 months or so that all of us have been at home for majority of the part. I've been continuing my work, out of home. I have two young boys. They are 8 and 4 years old, and previously my work would involve a fair amount of travel. So they are used to seeing their dad around them all the time. So I'm enjoying those aspects also. It started with a bunch of I guess on the fly on the sorry bunch of real time adjustments, right? We all had to make those, from figuring out how to do, I guess, your daily chores alongside your work, and nothing else slipping by. I mean, required a good amount of innovation on all of our fronts. So I think it's okay, now we are used to it. And now it will be even more interesting to see once we return back to a fully normal life, how that transition will look like. So let's see.
So, sir, it's been so many years since you have passed out of VESIT. Have you ever are you in touch with your batchmates? Have you ever come back to campus? What is it like? Have you got in touch with anyone, any faculty, anybody?
It's a multi-layered answer I'll give you. Uh, so I've not been to visit like since I graduated. I think probably for the first year or something I might have gone there. But as you can see with my backdrop, this is the new campus. I want to see it in person. I've never been there, but it's so amazing that this is how the college looks, and quite different than when we were back in Visit. So I spent 6 years in Visit from '96 to 2002, and it was one of the most fun experiences, I would say. Some of the friends which I made there, they are my closest friends today. My wife is a batchmate, so like we were in the same class together. So every now and then we do recount our visit days. Uh, uh, with regards to my batch, about a week ago, we had an impromptu Zoom session. So it was nice reconnecting with a lot of them after more than a decade. We all saw each other. It's always nice to recollect your visit days. That's where the journey began. Quite memorable.
And Zoom meetings are all the rage these days, anyways. So even this call is happening on Zoom. So
True.
right. Sir, another question I had is your master's and your PhD are in two completely different domains. So I'm kind of curious, how did that happen?
It was not planned, for sure. Like you, I was a student in EXTC, Electronics and Telecom. For my master's, I also went for a telecom degree. And I wanted to research with a professor. I really wanted a research fellowship because that's it was one of those things which I wanted to accomplish. When I reached my university there, the professors had kind of changed their research directions, and it was a combination of not finding work which was interesting, and also some professors that I did want to work with. There were no openings in their research groups. So I started looking at which professor is it that I can at least start working with, maybe gain some experience. So I met my advisor, my PhD advisor at that time, Dr. Adam Fontecchio. Was purely a chance meeting with him, and he showed me some papers. I'll tell you what that paper title was, because that day I remember what facing a bouncer meant. The paper was titled "Holographically Formed Polymer Dispersed Liquid Crystals." The minute he handed that paper to me, my first instinct was, "Chalo beta, bhago." This is wrong room, wrong prof. not going anywhere. But he hung around. Our discussion went for a few more minutes. I took those papers home and I started reading them. Something about it which connected with me. It was creating devices which are which are based on electro-optics. So these were switchable windows that would be opaque, if you look at them normally. And once you apply an electric field, they would become transparent. And he was advancing his study in this area. And somehow that inspired me as I read more and more of this work. So I thought that, okay, let me start researching with him, see what happens. I start working with him for about 6 months time, because I still was not sure if that is what I wanted to continue on forever. But I took that time. After 6 months, I was deeply, truly in love, with that topic. And I said, hey, here's what I want to study. A master's will not cut it for me, because a master's is over within 2 years of time. A bit lesser because a master's also involves writing a thesis. So I said, there's no way I can learn everything I want to in about a year's time or so about this topic. So that's when I'm like, I really would love to explore a PhD, find my own research topic. And master's was in telecom, but for my PhD work, it's related to telecom because some of those devices are applicable to electro-optic switches. But I would say the research work was about 70% material science, and then the electro-optics fun began.
That's honestly absolutely inspiring. We'll be learning more about your journey, sir. I believe you have a presentation for us.
I do.
Okay,
I've been
so
talking to
I
you
guess
about innovation.
please take the floor, and I will join you on the other end for some question and answers. Okay, thank
Sounds
you.
good, Ananya. Thank you. Okay, so I wanted to share my thoughts on innovation and discuss a topic with you called as design thinking. I stumbled upon design thinking uh, later in my career. When I was working with a bunch of colleagues, what we would do is sit together every 2 weeks around lunchtime, and we'd bring an interesting problem that we all wanted to attack. Now, each of us came from different backgrounds, different technical backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds. So we used our individual perspectives in a very interesting manner. Because we each look at the problem a bit differently, the way we would propose our solutions had some uniqueness and novelty to it. And through this approach, our group, later on, we filed more than 100 plus patents in a 4 or 5 year span. So it was not just my group alone. We made sure that there were enough of such collaborative groups that we set up, across our company. So this approach that we were following was design thinking. We just did not know that it was called that. Why is it important for you? Because a number of you will be studying different projects. You'll be studying different subjects. You'll be working on various projects. And if you use this framework, it will ensure that your project will be unique. You will make something which will be useful. And third, later on, what I want to instill in all of you is how you can convert that into a publication or ideally a patent. So let's dive in. Design thinking, very simply, is an approach to create innovative products and services. It relies on one key topic, which is you want to have an acute understanding of users' needs. Users are other people who are actually using your product, your end customer. You want to have a very strong understanding about who they are, how they are using different products or services, and how you can make their lives better. And what I found out eventually is that design thinking is a mindset through which you can approach any problem. I've used design thinking to plan my career, to plan different home projects. So it's not just that you can apply it only in work or in a technical domain or in an architectural domain. A good resource for design thinking and studying what it is a company called as IDEO. They are an innovation consultancy firm. Over the years, they worked on some amazing projects. And if you just look at the variety of projects that they have done over the years, it covers everything from genes to pharmaceuticals to banking and so on. Wanted to highlight a couple of very interesting examples. Here's this project called as the Leader of Light. Now, you might have seen these shanties or slum areas in different parts of the world. And a big problem that they all face is a lack of natural light, and also they may not have the electricity which we all are used to in urban environments. Now, how do you provide electricity to them that is cheap, economical, and something which is functional? So group actually worked on a solution which is called as a Leader of Light. What you are seeing is the bottom half of a 1.5 or 2 liter soft drink bottle. Those big fat bottles that we buy. They fill them up with water, bleach, and a little algae. And it's placed, they cut a hole in the roof, and the bottle is just sticking there. So the top part is hanging out of the roof. The bottom part is in the home, and they put a sealant around it. Now, because of the bleach, the light refracts beautifully, and I believe that the wattage that you kind of get is close to that of a 40-watt bulb. So imagine all that it requires are three things. And why is the algae there? It is basically to prevent any dirt or fungus, basically keep the water fresh for a long amount of time. You would have seen the hippo rollers. It's again an innovative way, right? Over the years, we are used to people carrying these mudkas of water on the head, and they are traveling long distances. And just through a simple, innovative way of thinking, they came with a solution that others can adopt. And you can see numerous such examples, where design thinking has been used. Now, I want to show you some ways of thinking, or rather a framework that you can apply to the various projects that you will be working in. Now, before we jump into design thinking, I wanted to share with you 3 design challenges. This is a key criteria for all innovation projects. The 3 criteria are people, where you're trying to understand whether there's a need for product, you're trying to understand the business aspect of things, and you're trying to understand the technical feasibility. When you meet these 3 challenges, you have an irresistible innovation. So on the people dimension, what you're trying to understand is that, is there a real customer need? Are there people who are really facing the problem that you're saying? Are they willing to pay for it? Who are the people? Are they teenagers? Are they say senior citizens? Are they technical people, right? So you're trying to understand, who are the people that are expressing a pain, and also importantly, you are trying to understand whether that pain is to such an extent that they will pay you to solve that problem. Then we look at the technical dimension. So here what you're trying to understand is that, is it feasible enough? Can we make it? Number of times people say that, hey, I want to apply artificial intelligence to solve this problem. Great. What do you know about artificial intelligence? Are you trained enough? Will you need to learn something? Will your team need the necessary training? And once you do that, do you have the right infrastructure on which you can apply your AI models? So you're trying to understand on a technical front what is required to make it possible. And third, you're trying to understand is, what is the business viability? Can we make money at the end of it? And this means that, hey, you will make a product for cost X, and you have to sell it at X plus some delta. And that delta should be good enough to pay for all your expenses and possibly give you more money that you can make a better product in the future. So do you have a viable business model? So to recap, you have these three design challenges. On the people segment, you're trying to understand if the opportunity is real. Who's the customer base? And truly, is there a real unmet need that you are trying to address? On the technical front, what you're trying to do is understand the technical feasibility. It is possible that there are solutions like this in the market. Compared to those solutions, is your offering competitive? Do you have the right technical skill set? And if so, can you deliver it? And this might imply that you will have to deliver it in a certain amount of time, or else someone may enter the market and provide a different competitive solution. On the business front, you're trying to address, is it worth it? Is it financially viable? How much will people pay for it? Are there enough people who will pay for it? So you're trying to really address these three challenges. And once you meet all of them, you have an amazing innovation. So having set this background for you, I want to show you what design thinking is. And my reference for this is the Stanford D School Process Guide. I highly recommend you to spend some time on this website. Bunch of resources there. You can really gain a lot of value by visiting. Empathize, where you're trying to see the world from your customer or your user's perspective. Define, you are working towards a core problem that you will address. Ideate, you're trying to come up with many ways of addressing or solving that problem. Prototype is you'll try to create a quick, dirty, cheap, or in other words, sasta sundar, not tikau prototype. And test, you are going to get feedback. And this is an iterative process, right? It's quite possible that after testing, you hear something which might require you to go to the drawing board. The journey is also quite iterative because let's say in the ideation phase, you figure out that, hey, there's nothing really interesting. So are you looking at the right problem? So you might have a bunch of these, sub loops which are playing in. In other words, your journey might feel like a roller coaster. It's a lot of fun, a lot of loops. Be prepared for that. But the outcome is worth the ride. So let's look at each of these elements individually. Empathize, as it literally says, you're putting yourself in the user's shoes. So this means you have to understand how they are actually living in their current world. So with regards to, let's say, if you have a product which you're planning to introduce or you're thinking about, what is it that they're using today? How are they using it? As they are using it, are there any physical or emotional needs that they're expressing? So for example, if I give my parents a new phone, they might take some time to figure out, okay, what does this button do? I'm missing a certain button which was there on a previous phone. Here it's all different. Or they might just express frustration at doing things. So if you're expressing frustration, that's an emotional feedback that you're showing. Also, what they might do is they might express joy or happiness at something. So take note of what their physical and emotional needs are. You are really extracting what is meaningful to them. So if you have to apply this towards your project, and this especially is towards the final year students, but even to the other ones who are participating in hackathons. Really, rather than just starting from something new technically that you want to introduce, try to understand what is being used today in the world. Because it's natural you'll try to pick a particular segment, a product, or it can be, let's say, an algorithm that you want to develop, but don't just start from that point. Start one or two steps before that, which is understand what is out there in the world today, how is it being used, what are the issues with it, with respect to their users. And how can you really get this information? You can observe users, right? If it's a real product that is out there in the world, you can ask them if you can observe how they are using it. Conversations work really well, and try to make sure these are informal conversations. If you engage them over chai or coffee or whatever, and they're comfortable expressing their frustrations with you, that's the kind of engagement you want with them. And really, you're paying attention to watching them and you're listening to them. You're fully attentive to the feedback that they're giving you. So here's when you're shutting off your creative brain. There's a time and place for that. It's not now. All you're doing is you're listening. Now you've taken all this information. You want to distill it to craft a point of view. So here you want to craft a meaningful and an actionable problem statement. The way you do it is by inferring patterns from the user study. You say that, hey, here's how a particular segment of people are using things. Here's how technically things are stacking up. And from that, you draft a need statement. Okay, so what you're going towards is a narrower space. So previously, you obtain a wealth of information. Now, from this wealth of information, you're not going to address each and every problem that people have expressed. You're going to craft a meaningful problem statement based on the patterns that you've observed. So here there are three types of needs. Primary needs are needs which are absolutely essential for the product or service. So take any product, like say a phone. A phone will need to have a call button. It's an absolutely essential requirement. Then you have secondary needs, so needs which are good to have, but they are not must have. So for example, it can be like a protective sleeve that I'm putting on any device. It's not a requirement, but it's pretty good to have it because I might spill some water or some liquid over it. What are the latent needs? So these are the ones which are absolute gold. These are needs which are not expressed by the users, but meeting them would result in an unforgettable experience. So I helped my parents set up a Fire Stick, and I had to walk through them, over the phone in how they set things up. So they were expressing a lot of issues with regards to, hey, how does it work? How does the setup work? And so on. Now the experience was I would say a bit okayish for them, just because it took a few iterations, primarily also related to the various OTP mechanisms that are ongoing. But if these were things that you can address in a much easier manner, meeting them would result in an unforgettable experience. And really, this is where innovation and differentiation reside. So what you're really trying to uncover is there something which the people are not experiencing? But if you are able to address it, man, they would be so happy. They would even pay you tons of money for that. Now, that's the kind of level that you need to approach. Then comes the fun part. Here's when you let your creative side go wild. You want to generate n number of solutions. And how do you do that? You're combining your understanding of the problem with your imagination. So here you're thinking volume. You have to generate a volume of ideas. So it requires you to brainstorm in a diverse group. Diversity matters because they all give you different perspectives. Encourage wild ideas. This is the time to have no filter, right? I know you're using the hashtag quite a bit, no filter. Use that hashtag here. Anything crazy out of the box works fine. Use it. Defer judgment. Here is not the time where you play Judge Saab. There's a time and place for that, not now. If something is suggested that you don't agree with, shut up. Don't say anything to it. Let that go on the ideation board. Listen to all kind of input that people are providing. Now you go to the proof of concept phase, which is from the volume of ideas that you collected from this forest that you have in front of you. You're trying to carve a path, or you're trying to carve 2 or 3 paths. So you take a couple of those paths and figure out, can you create a quick and dirty prototype? And why must you prototype? Because when you implement, you will understand your idea better. It will give you other things that you may not have thought of before. Also, it starts a conversation. Anytime you show a prototype to someone, they will provide you input, which usually is valuable. And most importantly, you want to fail quickly and cheaply. This is something which does not take too much time or too much cost to set up. And if you found something that is not workable enough, no problem. You fail quickly, move on from that, try the next experiment. And which is why you can test more and more possibilities. So I'm showing you a graph here where you're on the y-axis you have the cost of errors, on the x-axis you have your project progress. If you are going to be generating topics for your final year projects, for hackathons, make as many mistakes as you want over here, because the cost of doing those errors is quite minimal. Because assume if the project progresses and you figure out that the entire year you spend something which doesn't work, that's as early as possible. Think volume, think as many iterations you want to implement, take the cost of failures and move on. Because from this point onwards, you'll be learning something new that eventually, you won't make a mistake or terrible mistake deep down in the cycle. Okay, so try to live in a low cost region that improves your ROI. Once you have your prototypes done, you have to solicit feedback. I like this quote by Thomas Edison, who was really very much into experiments, right? He tried things a number of times. So the more experiments you try, you learn more from that. That is, that reinforces your learning, that allows you to also validate your point of view. And the best learning is that it provides you what you can try next. There must be something you miss, something else that you can improve. So having this virtuous cycle is very important. And be very aware that you might have to go back to the drawing board. Okay. So to recap, design thinking is this wonderful framework which works if you follow it end to end. I can guarantee that a number of you have done all of these individual blocks at some point of time. The reason why it's so successful is because if you follow it end to end, when you put yourself in the user's shoes, when you define a qualitative problem statement, that's the key. What is the core problem statement you're going to solve? That sets the tone for how you can ideate and create n number of solutions, which will lead to how and what you prototype. And then you collect user feedback. Follow this framework end to end, and you will be successful. Then finally, you have the 3 product design challenges, right? Which are people. Is there a real need? Technically, can you make it? Is it feasible? And on the business front, does it have a viable business model? When it comes to business viability, we can cover this later on if you guys are interested. What you have to understand is our various approaches. Some of them are not too complex to set up. I like the NPV, which is the net present value analysis. You can Google it up. It's a quick, easy way to kind of get your first level analysis, whether something is viable or not. And of course, you can make it very, very complex also if you want to. That can be done as your project progresses. And the value for doing this is quite often as engineers, we are used to understanding the technical front. We are used to understanding if there is a market need for that. but we tend to leave the business viability aside. And that's a very important understanding, because quite often, you come out of this segment and the learning is that the opportunity is actually quite difficult. Like for it to work as from a financial perspective, it's going to be very difficult or not possible at all. And that learning is quite important. Now, why does design thinking work? Because you're putting a customer first approach. You are solving for the user. And if you truly solve it for them, you know that there's a demand for your solution. It can, of course, make you a market leader, has the potential to give you profitability and growth. Quite often, it is used to disrupt existing solutions. Why? Because you're trying to uncover latent problems, the needs that people are not expressing. And when you do that, you can suggest some really innovative out-of-the-box solutions. It's a framework which is suitable no matter what level you go for. I've applied it at the individual level, but you can certainly apply it at the startup level or in large corporations too. And the part which I like the most is that quite often people just think that, hey, this approach can apply only towards products. Whereas if you think of services like IT services, it may not work. That's untrue. Design thinking approach actually works well for both kind of domains. Now, having said this, right, what we've learned are ways in which you can apply innovation towards your work. And the output of those innovations are of course your products or services. But I also want to highlight another aspect, which is intellectual property. Intellectual property rights are very important in today's day and age. If you're approaching a problem in a different manner, it is quite natural that you will create opportunities for IP rights. Now, broadly speaking, there are 4 kinds of IP rights which are applicable to the technical world. I won't cover all of these in detail. There are more to these, but I'm just showing the 4 which are quite likely that you will encounter. Let's start with trademarks. Trademarks protect brand identities. So you might be used to certain product names, like Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is a trademark, it's a product, right? So you identify with certain products because of their logos or because of their product name, which are trademarks. If you will be writing code, or if you are generally speaking expressing ideas, in the written format, for example, you will be generating copyright. So software is a form of copyright. Movie scripts, songs, they are copyrights. When it comes to your ideas and inventions, you have a choice between keeping it hidden. So India does not really have a trade secret, but from a concept perspective, trade secret is something like your secret sauce. You keep it hidden. So like that masala for your masala soda, right, or masala thumbs up, that person may not tell you what goes into it, because that's that person's trade secret. You keep going to that shop again and again because they're giving you an irresistible product. On the other side, you have patents. Patents allow you a bunch of things, and that's what I will cover. So I work a fair amount in the patenting domain, and I believe it adds a lot of value, especially to students and also to research institutes. So the benefits of patenting your invention are: if you have a patent, you can prevent others from using your ideas without your permission, and your permission can be received in exchange for a few things. Right? You can say that, hey, I give you permission to use my ideas in exchange for certain monetary considerations. You can set up revenue streams, like licensing is one way through which you can do this. There is cross-licensing, which means, let's say you and your friend have patents in different ideas. You can say, okay, hey, how about we cross-license our patents, so together we can create better products. Increasingly, venture capitalists are looking at patents filed by tech companies. They're more keen also on the quality of patents which are being filed. So it's an important criteria which is which is gaining importance with a view for raising funds. Marketing credibility, right? Imagine if you pick a product which says, hey, this product is built on something which has 4 or 5 patents pending. Naturally, you will believe that, hey, this is something very innovative that people have designed. Also imagine as a student, if you're going to put it on your resume that you have filed for X number of patents, that looks very impressive, because people believe that, yeah, this person not only looked at a problem, but also figured out an innovative way to address that problem. What are the key criteria for something which is considered as patentable? And this, generally speaking, these are the criteria used by patent offices around the world. The first one is novelty. Novelty with regards to what's out there. So the reference point for this would be around the world, that compared to everything which we know of, could be journal papers, could be blogs, could be other products, what is new in this invention? The next one is obviousness. And this is a gray area, because here what people are trying to say is that what we knew before was X, and here is my delta, which is novel. So the criteria that people are using is that this delta which is being proposed, is that obvious to someone who's working in this domain? And that's why it's a gray ways to address this. And finally, there is utility, which is this useful or not? So let me share a sort of a non-tech example. Like in India, we have ceiling fans, right? The 3-blade ceiling fans. And we know that in summer it gets very hot. So imagine if you were designing this 3-blade ceiling fan, assume it runs at 500 RPM. I don't know what speed they run at, but let's just say it's 500 RPM. And your family members are saying, hey, it's too hot these days. You are an engineer. Get us more air circulation. So you're like, okay, the world has made fans which run on motors that rotate at 500 RPM. I'm going to design the first ever fan which runs on 1000 RPM. So your novelty, that delta, is going from 500 RPM to 1000 RPM motor. So bigger motor, more horsepower, let's say, the fans will rotate at a faster speed. Let's apply these 3 criteria. Let's start with utility. I think people will use this product, right? If you give them a fan which rotates at a faster speed, they will buy it. Novelty, is it really novel? I would say, fine, let's just, for the sake of discussion, it looks novel, and truly assuming it's the first ever fan like that, let me give this a conditional check mark. What about obviousness? So the way patent offices might approach this is that, hey, there are other domains such as cars where people go from a lower speed motor to a higher speed motor. There are mixer juicer grinders where they go at a higher speed. So we don't think this is novel. I mean, this would be obvious to anyone who works in this domain. So such an invention, which is like a mere extension, will not be patentable. But is that the end of the road? So I would say no. I mean, being the engineers you are, and in this make-believe world, I would say you go deeper. And how do you go deeper? You figure out what the true problem you're solving. The true problem you're solving is not that the fan has to rotate at a higher speed. The fundamental problem is that you want more air circulation. So you're looking at what causes more air circulation, how can you increase it? So one of the ways is, okay, you can move the blades at a higher speed. So then what causes the blades to not go at a higher speed? So one is the motor limitation itself. The other could be dust accumulation, right? Drag. If dust accumulates on your fan blade, they will change the aerodynamics, and that's a big cost from an efficiency perspective. So let's just say you design these blades which, as they move, they repel dust through electrostatics. So you're like, okay, now let's see what that does. Will that be useful? And the beauty is that those blades can run with motors at different speeds. They'll work equally well for 100 RPM motors or 1000 RPM. So I believe there'll be demand for this. If you think of novelty, yeah, assuming this is the first time ever that you're introducing such a product, yeah, sure, it can be novel. And obviousness, yeah, I mean, none of the products so far spoke about this issue in the first place. So you're truly the first one to have thought of this thing. So what you're proposing, the delta which you're bringing in, actually meets all these three criteria. So that's how you kind of approach patenting and intellectual property. And from this also, you can add this work after you file your patent application. You can ideally convert that into a strong research publication too. So as students, I would like you to think in this manner, right? You're going to be spending a lot of time working on your projects. Get something more productive out of it. Pick a better problem. Apply design thinking. Make sure it's an innovation that people can benefit from, and try to convert it into a patent application, and try to convert it into a research publication. I thank you so much for being a patient audience. I'll be very happy to answer your questions.
So that was a very informative session, sir. I, for one, got a much better understanding of what design thinking is. And I think you said a couple of things in the beginning, like litter of light and hippo roller. I found those things very interesting, to be honest. And also the entire process you took us through of, the kind of thinking and the kind of issues they face and how to tackle that. It was brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Anyways, now we will be asking you a few questions, if you're up for it.
Sure.
Okay. So with technology changing every day, what is the necessary skill sets a student should possess to get an opportunity at a company like Qualcomm?
So I would say not just for a company like Qualcomm, but probably for any role that you want, be it in the tech domain or non-tech domain. To me, technology is a tool. Technical skills are a tool. The world that we are living in, your ability to approach a problem, to define a problem in a meaningful manner, to me, that's a more fundamental skill. So students should kind of get better at figuring out what is it that they need to solve. What's the fundamental problem being asked here? And quite often that is not apparent from the questioner also. And so that's, as a skill, I think, work towards that. How do you express an observation into a core problem statement, and how do you come up with a solution plan? And your solution plan might involve certain technologies. Those are tools, in my opinion. And from one domain to another, the tools can vary. So tools can, for example, cover programming languages. It can cover instruments. It can cover, let's say, hardware platforms. Those are all skills or tools which you need to apply. So as students, I would say, no matter what you're doing, try to become better at asking questions. That starts with your curiosity, right? The more you start asking questions, the more you get better at reaching the core problem is, what the core problem is. And from that point onwards, you figure out, okay, what is it that I really need to learn in order to solve that problem.
Right. So basically to have a problem solving approach in life. Okay. Brilliant. How and why do you think design thinking should be incorporated in today's technical courses?
That's a good question. I think just because you're getting close to what the fundamental users' problems are, that's why. And the reason I'm repeating the word fundamental is that once you address it, then you know that it's going to be a solution that's going to be adopted by everyone. It also allows students to figure out uh, a way to implement what they're learning. My problem as a student sometimes was that I would learn things which I had no idea of how in the world I could implement them. That was never made apparent. With a framework like this and going back in time, I would say with an approach of design thinking, I could have really understood that, okay, here's, for example, how Fourier transforms can apply in a real world scenario, or here's where I can use spectrum analysis, or here's where I can use certain instruments or microprocessors, for example, to solve certain issues. The application of things is very important, and that's what's missing. I think if they introduce design thinking, or if you bring this framework, even if they don't introduce it, you have to take matters at least in your own heads, right? Apply this kind of thinking to create better learning outcomes for yourself.
Absolutely. That's actually very important because design thinking, as you highlighted, is basically having a very, identifying the problem is often something that people find difficult. Like in engineering, we tackle the solution process, but we sometimes fall short on identifying the needs and the problem exactly.
Yep.
Okay. So, sir, like we were discussing earlier, students nowadays aren't inclined to research that much, maybe because of the lack of career prospects. So, what do you think are the benefits of doing research as a career?
Thanks, Ananya. I would say I was at one point of time in the same boat as them. I did not believe that I could do research or I was a researcher. It took me leaving the country and finding a professor who told me that you actually have very good potential. To explore a problem for a much longer amount of time. It's not like you have to study something, for study leave. You study last year's question papers and you're done. You have to go much deeper, and that's what life demands. Whether it's a research career or not, uh, you will be paid to solve important problems, and that requires you to be patient in terms of looking at a problem, figuring out what the right path is to solve that problem. A research exposure really gives you that ability and that confidence in yourself. And what I also learned after researching is that I learned how I like to approach a particular topic better. That was not apparent to me, at least when I was doing my undergraduate studies. But as I started researching more, I figured out the way I absorb some information much better than other topics. But most importantly, it's how you get to the problem solution framework, right? What's the core problem you have to solve? What are the ways in which you solve it? And being an independent researcher is also important, because that way you have the full freedom to try these approaches that you're thinking about, and it's okay to fail if those don't work, because even that's a very valuable input to a researcher.
Amazing. So basically, like all the famous scientists that we have, you just try till you succeed, I guess. Anyway, so the next question of mine is based on startup culture. Like you said, you interact with a lot of startups, and I think that also ties up somewhere with business viability, because startups need to have a really innate sense of whether the business is going to take off or not. So, what can you tell us something about your experience with startups, or what you expect the startup trend to be like once the lockdown is opened?
So I've been interacting with startups for about 5 years now in India, and I would say that my learnings with them have been quite enriching. These are companies mostly in the hardware space, because that's professionally those are the kind of startups I interact with the most. But I've also had opportunities to meet some of these startups in the e-commerce and the app domains. From an energy perspective, it's mind-boggling. Like just all across India, you have people who have the will to solve amazing problems. Uh, it's common now to read on Instagram, right? These hashtag hustle and all that. I think growing up, we're all used to that. Your engineering life is about hustling. It's about being very resourceful and solve problems that you're facing. So startups are really extending it. As engineers, you're going through that journey yourselves. What's even better is on the technical front. A few advancements have made things quite easy for one to have a startup, at least get to an MVP. One is learning. You can learn whenever you want. I'm sure in the lockdown, a number of you have spent a lot of time picking up new skills, learning new technologies. So it's much easier for you to learn new things. Also, much easier for you to implement those learnings. You have these virtual sandboxes. Even getting a hands-on hardware platform, it's quite easy these days. So you can try a lot of these experiments. But on the business viability side, some of the work still tends to remain, and that's mostly because people are very happy just focusing on the technical aspects or on the technical innovation. I think it requires you to take a step back every now and then and figure out that what is it that people are demanding, and also importantly, how are you going to solve the revenue business? Because you might get people who will fund you, but at the end of the day, it's also important that the startup scales to a meaningful business. So the sooner you can develop that, the better. Uh, it's okay if you can't develop that business understanding by yourself. It's a teamwork. A good startup has a very strong, diverse team. So it's not just engineers and technologists, or not just business people. You actually need both of them to work hand in hand together. So those are some of the things which I want to see as improvements from Indian startups. Have a more cohesive and a diverse set of founders. That leadership at the helm is very important. So that's, let's see, post COVID, post lockdown scenario. I'm sure they've been facing a lot of constraints, but having seen the energy, I believe that no matter what, this will just be like a speed bump.
Amazing. I know a lot of people who are aspiring to have their own startups from our own college. I'm sure your advice will be very useful for them. So, sir, last couple of questions will be a little informal. I know it's been a long time since you have passed out of Vesid, but I would really like to know, what are your fondest memories of Vesid?
Oh, there are many. There are many. My college was, or my visit campus was, I think, the old one, where from the bus stop we had to. There was a shortcut through which we went through the gutter nallies and all that. So those are some things which you do remember. Uh, Mostly because you were always late for college and you're running with friends in the rain, never knowing that when you'll slip inside there. The other is on the friendships part. My closest friends are from Visit. I would not trade them for anything in the world. They are people I resonate with, and most importantly, my wife. My wife and I, we were classmates at Visit. So, and as you can expect, it's quite a memorable moment for me out there. Uh, I think learning-wise, also, there are a bunch of things, but uh, I think the overall atmosphere which they had, the college being so strict, it led us to bond in different manners. Uh, the labs also, I remember some of our lab technicians, and just because you're confined in the college, right, you're building these relationships with the teachers, the professors, and over time you realize that even after years, you can start off right from where you left off. So yeah, Visit will always remain very special for us.
That's so sweet. Anyways, last question for today in the interview part of this discussion.
Sure.
What is your message to all the students who are watching this video?
I think have fun. I think that's the most important thing. The world will have various expectations on yourself. Uh, the social media is up in your face. I'm sure you'll be looking at what others are doing. How much successful they become or not become, and so on. All that is good, but leave that aside. Find your own path. Give yourself that freedom to explore what is it that you enjoy learning, what is it that you enjoy doing. We are all on this world for a short amount of time. We have we can make a meaningful impact. But figure out the one that you're happy doing. So take this time and freedom, because these college days are special. You can try a bunch of things, you can fail at a number of them, and it's okay. About a week ago, a number of our friends, from my Visit Delhi 2002 batch, we met over a Zoom call. Now, few of us, or actually most of us, are now in very different domains. But I would say, they all are doing okay. Some are more successful than the others. Some are, actually really successful. But at the end of the day, we're all fine. It all starts because it all comes down to whether you are having fun or not. I think that was one core thing which I could find in all of us. Right? Each had a different interest, but they took the time, the luxury, and that leap of faith. So Visit will prepare you for this leap of faith. As engineers, you are jugadus. You will find ways to get your things done. But trust yourself also that no matter what choice you make, you will be okay.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, if you have any last words.
No, thank you so much. It's indeed a pleasure and a privilege, talking with all of you. Especially, I want to thank Nandini ma'am, Naganan sir, of course, you, Ananya, and Ashirwad. Thank you for all the work behind the scenes. I know it's never easy. There's a lot of moving parts that people cannot see. And it's the true passion of Visit, right? We are doing this over a weekend. All of you are spending this time, talking to me. So I know that it takes a tremendous amount of drive and passion to make something like this happen. I wish all the best to the students at Visit, and all the best for your We Reach initiative.
Thank you so much once again, Dr. Hemang Shah, everybody. We'll be Welcome again to all our listeners. We are back with Dr. Hemang Shah for the audience question and answer round. Dr. Hemang, how are you doing? Still holding there?
Good, Ananya. Thank you so much. Good to see you again.
Yes, great to see you as well. So while we've been having this amazing discussion, we've had a number of questions coming in from our audience. So without any further ado, I guess let's get down to that, and I'll throw them to you one by one, and you can hit them out of the ballpark. Okay, so the first question is by Jimit. He says, what are the challenges a designer faces while designing a project and planning? How does communication occur there?
Is it a 2-mark question or a 8-mark question?
I guess with the time paucity, we'll keep it at 2 marks.
Okay. You have to start by looking at what designing really means. This is an area of continual learning for me. So when I look at design to me means not just the aesthetics of things. Most of the times when people say a product is well designed, they're just looking at the looks and the feel of that product. Here you have to make sense of what is required to make it work better. So a designer's primary purpose to me is function. They have to improve the experience. They have to look at what meaning the product has, and with that as the core problem, start solving it. And there you can throw in all the other pieces. If the aesthetics make sense at that point of time, sure, it will only make your design look better.
Great. I hope that answers your question, Jimit. Next question is from one of my own teammates, that is Atharva Gupte. He asks, is there a particular master's degree or an online course that you would recommend for people who are new and want to pursue design thinking?
I'm not aware of a direct master's degree in design thinking. There are a number of certificate programs, and you can take them at various places, both in India as well as around the world. But now with online, I think even the leading institutions are offering this online. So if you want to learn design thinking, right, probably take one of these certificate courses and then really work towards implementing it. You really get better by the more problems you will solve. And if this is a passion of yours, right, then you can certainly look at something like industrial design. There are a lot of postgraduate programs also which are being offered. In India, off the top of my head, I can think of NID, which is the National School of Design. I believe it's in Ahmedabad, but there are other places too.
Okay. So basically, there's no particular course, but you can opt for a certificate course and then try to do it on your own further.
That's one way to practice. And if you do want to do that, if you want a degree in design, then there are numerous programs. So just search for them online, look at what makes the most sense to you and which direction you want to get into.
Okay, so this is one question that really struck me. Can you share some examples or case studies where design thinking has changed perspectives? I know you mentioned in your presentation, of course, you showed us the leader of light and the hippo roller, but maybe some more examples of how people tackled design problems?
So, okay, there was one in search of meaning, right? And uh, just off the top of my head, a case study which I can think of is Bank of America had this Keep of Change initiative. So normally when we think of banking, think of those transactions or ATM, now everyone is used to, but go back in time when you were not used to using all these cards and online payments. I think America or Bank of America saw a couple of issues. One was the number of people who were using these debit cards. They were somehow not getting the message that, hey, the debit card is linked to your bank account. So you're not spending funny money. It is money which is there actually in your own account. And they wanted to reinforce this point that actually spending money through your debit card is a financially smart move. Now we can give Gyan sessions and all that, but really it comes down to usage. How many people are going to adopt this approach or this new method that you're talking about? So you're attacking the meaning of the problem, right? So they came up with this Keep the Change initiative. So let's say you're spending money for a cup of coffee and it costs you $1.50. Then they would give you 50 additional cents that went to your bank account. So they were kind of reinforcing the habit that, okay, that $1.50 which you spent was deducted from your bank account, but because you used your debit card, we'll just round up the amount and give the change back to you. So that's one way through which they change behaviors. The other one I read about an Italian company. I forgot the name of the company, but they specialize in lamps. Normally, when we think of lamps, we think like, okay, I want yellow light, I want white light. It's a desk lamp, it's a bedside lamp, it's a tube light. We always are used to thinking in those terms. But what people and when people go out to buy nice fancy lamps, they always think, okay, what does my room look like, and how will I place a lamp there? Will it fit? Will the color match and all that? But the true purpose of a lamp is to give you a lighting experience, right? There's mood lighting, there's study lighting, and all that. So this company, they actually designed a product which was based on mixing lights. You would not see the lamp ever. It was user driven. So the user could say, "Hey, I'm in the mood for cooling down." Right? You're at the end of the day, and so they would just throw a mix of colors that would fill your room. So that's the function of what a lamp does, right? A lamp gives you light. You are choosing instead of choosing a bulb which is giving you yellow light or white light. These folks would understand, hey, here's the appropriate mood lighting which I want to accomplish, and they are giving you that experience. Now that's traditionally not what people would think of when they go to buy lamps, but you're trying to first look at the meaning of a product or an experience that you want, and what's the best way to deliver it. And it's okay to flip it completely around its head. And people may not get it initially, but if they experience it, then they'll want it.
That sounds like some very out of the box thinking, but I guess then the brands that change people's perspectives are the brands that really rock the markets, right?
Absolutely right. I mean, who knew that our chai and panwalas will be having these QR codes that you can scan and pay them. No one would have believed you if you told them like 10 years ago. There was a time when people would check that, okay, do I have money? And instead of money, what they were looking for, do I have 10 rupee notes and 20 rupee notes and all that? Now the first thing people check for is, do I have my phone?
Yeah.
It's okay if I've forgotten my wallet somewhere, I can't leave my phone behind. The meaning has flipped on its head.
It's become a cashless economy, not by choice, but by need now.
It's your entertainment center. It's your learning center. It's your emergency center. In fact, people are probably making less phone calls, but they are doing more of other things on the phone.
Online shopping.
Yeah.
So the next question is again something that is very pertinent to your situation. So what the question asks is, how easy or difficult is it to actually change streams in terms of study because of your PhD and your bachelor's degree being in very different streams?
I think you have to first convince yourself that you are really interested in this new stream of study. Uh, if you are convinced and you believe that you can do it, then it's quite easy. But if you are changing streams for outside labels, uh, then I think you might have a problem. You have to do it because you want to do it, not because someone else is saying that this is the right thing to do, is the right thing to have on your resume and stuff like that. To me, that's all secondary. First, be convinced that switching the stream will add value to you. That's going to make you really enjoy that new material you'll be learning. Then it's all easy.
Okay. That makes sense, I guess. When you really want to switch, I guess when you have enough clarity, you will know how to do it on your own, basically.
Yeah, my classmate, were very good friend, same batch, EXTC. Uh, she wanted to work in the area of education. After telecom, she wanted to study this very different stream, and she's doing supremely well in that. Similarly, I have so many friends and colleagues who are doing different things than what they started out to. Some are doing very well in the areas of finance, some in completely left field areas. Uh, it all depends whether you want to do it or not.
Right. Okay, so the next question is from one of our faculty members. So Gaurav Taude sir asks, does design thinking work with all subject areas, and how is this different from project-based learning?
Uh, 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 Thank you, Gaurav sir. Yes, design thinking really works well across all sectors. It is truly an industry agnostic framework. I've applied it towards solving let's say, my career planning. I've applied it to solving, high tech problems. So you can apply it in whichever domain you want to. Uh, Project-based planning is great, but what project-based approaches do is they look for the execution of a defined project. Tasks are defined, schedules are defined, resources such as finances, facilities, everything is defined. So a project-based approach gets you from point A to point B, implying that they are very well defined. You know the start point, you know the destination point. Design thinking actually comes a step ahead of that, where you are trying to figure out what's the best journey to take, uh, what's the ideal destination to have. And after you've done a few iterations of the prototypes, then you can jump into the project life cycle.
I remember you saying somewhere in the beginning of our interaction as well that design thinking is more of a mode of thought. It's something that you start applying to all different problems across all aspects of your life.
Yeah, true.
Okay, so this next question is from me actually, because I was very intrigued about it when you were talking. You put a lot of emphasis on how your customer should be the center of your focus. Like you should be solving their problems, and you have to put yourself in their shoes and understand what they need. So my question to you is, how do you draw the line between putting the customer first and making your product business viable?
Good question. Uh, the product won't sell if you don't have customers, right? I can create a very new product, but what if no one wants it? And there's so many like those. Uh, you know, for example, look at a bunch of movies which are releasing, right? There are really crappy movies being made. Someone really thought passionately about them, and they release it without really figuring out whether this will work or not. And you have some of the largest, and this doesn't happen at really small scale movies. It applies towards big budget movies too. We hear of these box office disasters. That applies that same failure is experienced in various sectors also. Uh, so to me, of course, you have to think about, hey, what is the customer looking for? Who are my users? And also want to clarify that a customer doesn't mean someone who's at the end of a transaction. A customer can be your colleague in a different team. You have to understand, okay, if I'm doing a research project and my research is going from, say, my team to someone else, how will they use it? What are their expectations? How are they going to adopt my research work? So that what you deliver gets them going faster, and it's the thing that they expect. So that will lead to a nice virtuous cycle, right? You will get better feedback, you will get more resources to do better products, and so on.
Right. So you basically threw a new spin on the word customer, saying that it's not just the end user, but also anybody in between who might be utilizing your product.
Yeah. Yep.
That's brilliant. So the next question, I don't have a name here, but the question is, with social distancing norms being enforced now, is design thinking going to change in our day-to-day lives?
No, not really. I mean, I don't think social distancing has anything to do uh, with it. Where it will affect, some collaboration environments. Like you might be used to brainstorming together as a team, uh, and what this might imply is that not all of you can be huddled up uh, in a group of say 20 or 30 in a small space. You might have to just space apart a bit more. But there's so many collaboration tools. There's so many online collaboration tools. So I don't really think any of these programs will be significantly affected by not being present virtually. Yeah, there is value to having in-person interactions, giving people high fives and just the physical touches, acknowledgement, reading body language, that does play a big part. You can't solve that completely online, but I think you can live with that.
But then when you were talking about how it will not affect the way design thinking is done, it actually struck me design thinking would be implemented in a lot of places to enforce social distancing, right? So a lot of new ideas that are coming up, you may be seeing on the internet also, gyms and everything, where they are putting up separate units for one person to work out. I guess those are also examples of design thinking. So how else do you think it would affect?
Yeah, I'm happy that you were listening.
It is very intriguing, to be honest, because the way I see it right now, design thinking is going to come into maximum usage just after the corona, where we need to find new ways to do the things we always used to do.
Correct. I mean, think of the basic gyan that people talk about hygiene. None of this is really new information, right? Washing your hands, all that, age-old people have been giving us, but we're not following it. So what is, you can think of clever ways to inform it. Think of the way people are wearing some masks. You have masks which have good information. So people who have a marketing, bent of mind can put interesting messages on masks, and you can drive adoption this way. There are n number of ways to solve that problem.
I guess you just also showed how design thinking and marketing tie up at some point.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the next question again is from one of our faculty members. So Mrugendra sir asks, if you have the prototype ready, how does design thinking help? Where does it come into picture post product development?
Thank you for that question. That can be a difficult challenge, for a design thinking journey to start from that point itself. Because if something is already built, which is working fine, if it's meeting the needs that you've set out to, then I'm not sure if it makes sense to go back to the drawing board right away. Then you rather collect feedback on the prototype, see what the true user experience is, and only if it's abysmal or it doesn't meet the requirements at all, then it might make sense to start a new journey right away. Alternatively, what you can also think about is, if it's a prototyping journey and if you're not too late into it, uh, are there features that could be added? So learn from what your users have told. Maybe take a couple of those as problem statements, and that can be a constraint for your problem definition and ideation. That because the constraint would be a prototype is ready. You can't just add everything, but maybe a few things are possible within budget. Let's say if it's a concern, and use that as a starting point, and that way you can think of making that prototype a bit better.
Right. So basically, what you're saying is design thinking is more of an initiation process and not a review process. So you can't just choose to put in design thinking when you want. You have to take it into consideration in the beginning as well.
Yeah, you bring I think you worded it very well. Uh, you know, no, seriously, the design thinking journey is not something which applies, towards late stage startups. You have to sort of allocate sufficient time for that. It's not meant for really quick turnaround solutions. You can't. I mean, that's an expectation mismatch. So if you're too late in the cycle, there may not be enough time to introduce, hey, let me look at what my customers are looking for. Let me start that journey. All that is going to take some time.
Right. Okay, so this is going to be the last question for our audience interaction round because we are falling short of time now. This question comes from Soumya. She asks, in design thinking, how can you differentiate the viable ideas from the non-viable ones?
So when you get to the prototyping phase, you'll be creating a map, right? Of, okay, this is what we need to make. That's going to be your very first touch point, because in your ideation, let's say you've done wild, you've thrown everything you can think of at the table. Now, when it comes to making it happen, which is the prototype, that's when you'll get some of the ground truth information. If you're not aware about, let's say, what would it take to make that prototype a reality, that's when you can also bring in someone who's more experienced in that domain and get their feedback in. So prototyping phase is what I would call as the time when you get an adult in the room, and an adult here means someone who's done that before, who knows that if this thing can execute, whether it's worth doing it or not. So that's where you have this intervention phase.
Great, great. So, Hemang sir, that brings us to the end of our interaction for today. I must say it's been really incredible having you on board. And the more I have spoken to you, the more I've realized how design thinking is there in the small, small things around us and how it's going to be useful from now onwards as well. So, once again, I would really like to thank you for coming on board with us. And do you have anything you would like to say to our viewers for one last time?
I'll be very happy to be connected to all of you. Like, reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. You can be very happy to connect with anyone from Visit. Feel free uh, to connect. If I can help you in any way, it'll be an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for hosting me.
Thank you for being here, sir. Thank you so much. It's been incredible. But now is the time for us to sign off over here. At this point, I would just like to say the BRICH initiative has been brought to you on behalf of IQAC and IIC. And I would also like to thank the entire team that has worked really hard to put this show on the road. Without you guys, all of this would not have been possible. Thank you so much once again. Hemang sir, again, thank you so much for being here despite your busy schedule. And I hope that your knowledge has benefited a lot of people today. At this moment, I would like to say I am Ananya, and this is where we sign off for today's BRICH program. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.